Ann Jennings would eventually be whittled down to my Johnston Middle School theater teacher, Miss Whittles. And I don't think anybody knew that Miss Whittles' name would eventually be whittled down to Mrs. Wax. All right, I'm sure we're all a whittle sick of these puns, so let's re-wax and move on. The point is, I had no idea when I first came into HSPVA that I would eventually be standing on this stage speaking to you now. It's just proof that through hard work, perseverance, and 7 semesters of online AP courses, anything is possible. I went by a number of titles in my time at HSPVA. I was the editor-in-chief of the paper, I was a happening chair, I was vice president of our chapter of the International Thespian Society, and I spoke with irritatingly loud bravado on our morning announcements every single day. In fact, during Tech Week of Avenue Q, when someone asked Miss Whittles why our show hadn't been promoted on the announcement, she asked, well, why didn't you ask the mayor of PVA, referring to me. And I must say, I kind of like that title, not just because it glorifies me, although that is always nice, but because HSPVA really is like a small town. It has been crushed by the recession, everyone knows everyone else's business, and we are all trying our best to escape. There's also the camaraderie and people supporting each other, but we'll get to that later. I think it's only appropriate that I take some time to thank some of the people that brought the class of 2014 to where we are today, our senior teachers especially. I'd like to thank Mrs. Julian, who at this point in the speech is probably either moved to tears or really angry. Mrs. Julian emphasized the great importance of including the beginning, middle, and end of a story in our essays. So, hopefully I don't lose points on this speech because I'm not going to include the 2 hours of graduation that haven't happened yet. Yes, I know, it's technically the end. I'll fix it later. I'm serious, you guys. I'd like to thank also Mr. Sanders, who's graduating with us and moving to Austin. As he would say, turn up. Mr. Sanders behooved us to come up with a really great senior prank. And though we failed him, I'd like to tell Mr. Sanders not to worry. That AP economics test was enough of a joke as it is. I kid Mr. Sanders, of course. I'd also like to thank Algebra 1 / Pre-Cal / Calculus teacher, Mr. Stickney. Turns out, the administration has requested that for his first graduation, Mr. Stickney attend 3 different graduations at 7 different venues, but I'm sure he'll be able to handle it. I'd like to thank, inside joke. I'd like to thank Mr. Landry, physics teacher extraordinaire. Mr. Landry this year, as part of an experiment in our AP physics class, as mentioned by Peter, hung a banana from the ceiling and left it there until after our AP test. And you know what? I think that banana represents our senior class well. It was degrading in quality as the year went on. Hanging by a thread. And eventually saved by William Graham. I would also be remiss if I did not thank some of my theater teachers this evening. Now, I had to write this in advance, so I could only assume that Ms. Ogden would be here. I'm glad she made it. I'd like to thank Ms. Ogden for sticking with the theater class of 2014 for the past 4 years, even as everyone else left. 19 students, nearly a dozen teachers and consultants, and 1 ceiling later, Ms. Ogden remains with us. My conclusion is that through her incredibly busy schedule, she simply forgot to quit. What was I supposed to do today? Oh, that's right, I was gonna leave. Oh, I'll get to it tomorrow. I'm glad tomorrow never came, Ms. Ogden. I'd like to thank Ms. Whittles, who just got back from maternity leave just in time for us to leave for eternity. And Ms. Whittles was, as mentioned, my teacher at Johnston Middle School. And let me just say that if you can handle directing dozens of middle school kids in theater for 3 years, you can handle having a baby. And I believe in her very much. I'd like to thank Charles Swan for not letting up on the sass for 1 single day. That is all. Thank you, Dana Harrell, for teaching me how to use a drill. That's just not an easy task. Thank you to Paul Davis, who did not directly teach me in any class, but he just deserves more praise for his amazing sets. There's no joke here.